Yo, what is up guys? I'm here hitting you up with a new video. So today we are finally talking about Jinwoo's skills, which are his best skills, which are his best in slots, where do you want to use them, and what kind of skill combinations you want to use in different kind of content. And hey, if you're new to this channel, feel free to subscribe. I basically upload every single day. Now that we got that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. So the first skill is double slash, but before we start about talking about these skills, there's one thing: we have non-elemental ability skills and we have elemental ability skills. In general, the elemental ability skills are better than the non-elemental, just because when you usually use the skills where you have an elemental advantages in the dungeons in general, and those provide you with the elemental coverage more damage than the non-elemental one. But besides that, there are some non-elemental skills you still want to use because they provide you a lot of extra utility. So first things first, the best in slot for double slash, we have like four different type of effects, rune skills. The best one for double slash is really just the wind version of double slash, because this one provides you some sort of utility with it having a stun effect which lasts for 1.5 seconds. And the big one is when the skill hits, charges dash one time. I also mentioned that one in my Power of Destruction beginner guide. When you struggle with survivability, this skill helps you out a lot just to make sure that you stay alive, while it also has quite the nice damage percentages and also has only a 10-second cooldown. Next up, we have the Crushing Blow skill. So there are two skills you might want to look into. The first one is the dark one, the countering break. So if you are good with countering and perfectly use that skill to get the counter attack off, this can actually in a dark advantage dungeon help you out, dealing a lot of break damage to bosses, because once you successfully counter attack with this skill, it provides also to the weak break a heavy break and stuns the enemy target by 3 seconds, which is really nice, but still it's quite rough or even tough to use that skill because you really have to time it perfectly. Then we have obviously the Ascension Break, which is one of Sung Jinwoo's, not maybe even what, yeah, it's one of the, maybe even the strongest skill in his entire kit, because this skill, it has a fire elemental which has a break effect, a medium break, it has a knockdown, and the most powerful feature about the skill is it charges your power gauge by 20% and it reduces your ultimate skill cooldown by 20 seconds. The blue version provides you with 10s, so 10% and 10 seconds. The purple version with 20% and 20 seconds, and the gold version with 30% and 30 seconds. This is extremely powerful because with this specific skill, even if you are in an elemental disadvantage, this skill allows you to spam your ultimate skill a lot more in the duration of 3 minutes during the whole entire battle, depending on how much time you need to clear a dungeon. Usually you can use an ultimate skill 2 times in the duration of 3 minutes, but this skill really allows you to spam your ult up to 4 to 5 times. And then if you combine it with the Mutilate ultimate skill, if you max that out to level 10, which has a 6239% damage multiplier with Jinwoo's attack, especially when you upgrade Mutilate, you max it out, you will notice how much more damage the old skill really does. And in combination with the Crushing Blow is such an amazing combo. And once you test it out, you will never go back, really. Next up, we have the Dagger Toss. This is probably Jinwoo's weakest skill in his entire kit. I tested out all of these, really, and the best one is probably Bombardment. I really tried to make a case for it, because when you use it, it has a similar effect to Black Hole. But the issue with that skill is the skill animation of this skill takes a long time. So if you see here, he throws up the dagger and you dash out of it, he will not throw his daggers down. So you really have to wait for the skill animation to finish for it to take effect, and it's just too long for it to be somewhere usable at all. So in general purposes, Dagger Toss is not recommendable at all. Then next up we have the Multistrike. Multistrike is Jinwoo's starter break skills, which provides you with medium breaks across the board except for the light one, which has a super armor effect and increases your crit rate by 3% for 8 seconds, and it can also reset itself. But it's just a general purpose skill. The best one for it is by far the dark version of it, because this one gives you invincibility frames while also increasing your damage. The Dagger Toss ability doesn't really matter too much since you're not going to use Dagger Toss at all, but it's a all-around good skill, with the dark ability being the best in slot. Then next up we have the vertical arts. The vertical arts has all the element coverage you have in the game, but when it comes to all the effects of this skill, really, the best one you want to use is by far the fire version of it, because it has a ranged effect while also having an AoE effect as well. It provides a lot of utility, knocks down, or not really knocks down, but it inflicts airborne to targets, gives you some sort of CC and control, gives you a little bit space to work against mobs. So this is a good utility skill against mobs while it also dealing quite some damage. Then when it comes to Cutting Rush, there are two abilities you want to look at. So first of all is the Thunder Pact, which is also a utility skill which provides you with invincibility frames and as well buffs your crit rate by 10% if you have the purple version, and if you have the blue version it gives you 7% crit rate buff, and the cooldown is 15 seconds. If you combine that with Reawakening or Very Distant Set, depending on what, you can upkeep the 10% crit rate buff the entire time. But in general, the best one is the Effulgence one, because this skill here provides you with a 20% crit damage increase, because usually you're maxed capped with crit rate anyways, and if you are in red CP or something like that, or if you're under level, then the crit rate doesn't really matter too much since you're not critting anyways a lot. But this one here is also very good because it dashes for ward, provides you 20% additional crit damage to further increase your damage, especially if you, for example, want to combine it with anything else, like for example the Scythe or even Westwind, and you can use it up to 2 times. The next one we have is the Vital Strike, with the Decimate ability being probably the best of it, because this one has the utility to increase your attack by 7% for 12 seconds, also only has a 15-second cooldown, which works fine. And then this skill here, the Internal Wound, it provides a defense break of 15%, but really defense break skills aren't as good for Jinwoo because you have the Shadow Step, and once you use it together with, like, let's say Reawakening, your cooldown is short anyways, so you can up, and the defense break of Shadow Step lasts for 15 seconds, and you get the cooldown from the Shadow Step down to 13 seconds or 12 seconds even, so you can upkeep the 60% defense break the whole time. So skills which provide you with a defense break in general for Jinwoo aren't as great, and also the Honin, which does some damage, is also not as good as it should be. And then we have the water version of that skill, which provides a shield, but it is not really as powerful as you would suspect it to be. Also, it has no utility. I mean, it has some utility with the shield, but really instead of using that one, you rather want to use the Multistrike water version, because that one provides you more ability. In general, the Vital Strike skill for Jinwoo is one of his weaker abilities. Now when it comes to Mutilate, he has the water ability, which has a freeze effect for 2 seconds, so it gives you a little bit of CC effects, and also has the ability with Frostbite, deals damage equal to 30% of the user's attack for every 3 seconds for 30 seconds. It's quite okay, it's nothing too crazy really, because when do you really need a water ability which provides you with the CC ability with the freeze? I think the only one where this skill could potentially shine is when you fight Vulcan, really, because then you can stun and also inflict the Frostbite on them. But the strongest ability here for the Mutilate is the Stroke of Lightning. You can charge that skill up, and the blue version has a 20% chance of ignoring 100% of the target's defense, while having it a higher level. I think the golden version of it provides you even with a 50% chance to ignore 100% of the target's defense, and this one is actually very, very powerful. So when it comes to elemental coverage, when the boss has a dark elemental weakness, this one is probably the hardest, one of the hardest hitting skills for Jinwoo. I think with the Power of the Dragon, I was able to casually hit 1 million damage with that skill, and also just because of the Stroke of Lightning and Jinwoo disappearing, it doesn't mention you have invincibility frames, but you cannot hit while the whole animation is going off. So this one is quite powerful, and in the future where we have like dark elemental dungeons and you don't really need break abilities, this one is very, very powerful to use, and you can look out for this specific skill. Next up, we have the Death Stance. Death Stance in general is an all-purpose break skill. It's fantastic across the board. Worth mentioning are the fire one first and the light one. So for the fire one, it increases the damage by 30% when you are fighting like fire elemental weakness. This is where you usually want to use it, and it also has a high damage multiplier, 920%, which is quite high, and it only has a 15% cooldown, and it applies a heavy break and has a knockdown ability. His Earth Shock one, the light one, is probably the best in slot and has one of the best utility in the game, just because using that skill provides you an additional 30% crit damage for 10 seconds, and it also has the ability to reset the cooldown of your Commander's Touch, which is quite powerful. So not only do you get a crit damage boost, but you also can reset the cooldown of your Commander's Touch. This is one of the most powerful abilities Jinwoo has right now in his kit. Now, when it comes to Commander's Touch, I think most of you think like probably Black Hole is the best in slot, because you see a lot of people using that specific skill. Yes, it is quite powerful, but only in specific content, and it depends on how you want to use it. For example, if you want to combine it with the Plum and the West Wind, then yes, for mobbing purposes, it's quite powerful. You can use that to get your West Wind stacks up, and usually it is a skill you will most likely see in Battlefield of Time, because once you cast that skill and mob everyone into one specific area while the skill is active, you can move around and use different types of skill at the same time, so you're not losing time. But still, this skill is more of a situational skill. But the one skill I want to talk about really is the Absorption skill. So the Absorption skill is by far the best Commander's Touch ability in the game. The purple version, I have it at level 13 right now, so it has almost 1400% attack multiplier. It has such a big AoE. It draws all the enemy, like it pulls in all the enemies together, does crazy amount of damage. I also saw the golden version of it, which has a 2000% multiplier, which is absolutely insane. It has CC capabilities by even pulling the enemies together, has the airborne effect, knocks them down, and also on top of that, it recovers your MP by 5%, and it recovers your power gauge by 5%, and that can stack up to 3 times, so basically 15% every time you use it. And now you combine that specific skill, the Commander Star's Absorption, together with Death Stance. So you start off with the Absorption, then use the Death Stance for a crit damage boost by resetting the Absorption one, and you can use it again. And what's so good about this skill in general is because what you probably notice is that you're running out of mana quite often in this game, especially in long drawn out battles. And Absorption really makes sure that you're not running out of mana. And that's absolutely fantastic. It also only has a 15-second cooldown. This one, by far one of the strongest and best abilities for Jinwoo in the game right now. Now, when it comes to the latest edition, the Armor Break, everybody starts out with the fire version of it, which you can charge up to 300%. It has now the new effect, the Almighty Break, which is insanely strong. And the fire version provides you a 30% crit damage buff for 5 seconds. But the thing with the skill, even though it's quite powerful and damaging overall, and it could potentially also, I think, have the highest damage output out of all his skills. The problem is it's not a multi-hit, it's a single target hit. So to get all the damage out of that skill, you need to crit immediately. Also, it's quite hard to hit targets with that element, because you really have to charge up to 300%. And if you like just press the button short, then he will just stop using that skill and you just wasted the skill, and that one is also on a 20 seconds cooldown. So the light version and the fire version is not as great. The water version also good if you have a water elemental advantage. This one is then powerful because it has a 1 second freeze. Doesn't really do too much, but it has the Almighty Break, and it has a huge AoE effect as well, or cone effect, not more AoE but more of a cone effect, which is quite good. But nonetheless, not if you just need it for the break, this one is the skill you want to use. Then we have the light version, which is the Multi-Shell Strike. It's similar to Multistrike's dark version is more or less exactly the same, with the difference that it is a light version. It scales off Jinwoo's attack and Jinwoo's defense, so it has more damage potential and also has invincibility frames. And this one increases your defense by 15% for 30 seconds, which can stack up 4 times, so you can get up to a 60-second defense buff, which helps out with survivability and also increases the damage output of that skill at the same time, which is quite good. So one of the better abilities. And then last but not least, we have the Vacuum Wave, which is probably in my eyes the strongest ability of the Armor Break, the wind one, because it has actually quite the big AoE effect, and as well it pulls in the enemies into its range. It has the knockdown ability, and if you have the purple version of it, what is quite powerful about this skill here is when a skill hits, it increases the target's damage taken by 10% for 12 seconds. And that one is also a unique debuff, which if you look, for example, like defense break you don't really need because you have the shadow step, right? So you would override the debuff. But since this is a damage taken down, you basically increase your damage output by 10% just by using that skill. And it also has the effect that it increases the damage for vertical arts by 20% for 10 seconds. By far the strongest skill for Armor Break. The wind version has a break effect, a strong break effect, has an AoE, it pulls in the enemies, and then on top of that inflicts 10% damage taken effect to all the targets, which is huge because that just allows you to get out the most damage. So if you have that one, use it. It's really, really nice. I use it a lot lately. It's just so fun to use. And if you have like Reawakening and stuff like that, you can reduce that cooldown and make sure you can use it more often. Now when it comes to combinations, you can, for example, in the Dark Elemental damage against Igris, you can combine Death Stance together with Multistrike, so you have 2 break abilities against Igris, or you can use in general the Absorption skill together with Death Stats Light skill rune, because that resets the Commander's Touch, which helps out. You can also combine the Black Hole ability together with Cutting Rush Effulgence, so you can put all the enemies into one place and then use Effulgence to kill them off with just one hit and buff your crit damage, which you probably have seen from Battlefield of Time for coverage. Then for multi-purposes, you can use the Crushing Blow. As I said, my top 3, maybe even my number 1 skill in the entire game, has break, has a lot of damage, and helps you with your ultimate skill spam. Very powerful. So depending on what dungeon you want to run, usually you want to run the Absorption skill with 1 break skill if there's a breaker. If not, you want to run a skill with the elemental coverage to it. When you do Power of Destruction, you want to use the Ascension break together with whatever provides you elemental coverage. For example, it's a wind rotation, then you want to use Vacuum Wave, for example, and if it's like light, you want to use the Death Stance. And this sums up everything you need to know about Jinwoo's skills, where to use them, what are the best in slots. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks guys for watching. Oh, and before I finish this one, real quick, let me know what kind of skill combinations you're using, and maybe you can let me know in the comments down below if you found out some crazy combinations as well. Thanks guys, see you with the next one. Deuces.